V2 Bullet Operator latest copy published. Robin Williams dropped the microphone. Silence. Then his eyes filled with tears. Nobody expected this. The Comedy Store in Los Angeles had seen thousands of performances over the decades. Legends had graced its stage, laughter had echoed through its walls countless times. But on this particular Tuesday night in 2009, something different was about to happen. Something that would break through the carefully constructed armor of comedy and reveal the raw, vulnerable humanity beneath. Robin Williams stood center stage, bathed in warm amber light. He had been mid-routine, his trademark rapid-fire delivery keeping the audience in stitches. His hands had been gesturing wildly, his voice shifting between characters with that supernatural ease that had made him a household name. The crowd was eating it up. Every pause, every punchline, every improvised tangent landed exactly as it should. But then a woman stood up from the third row. She wasn't heckling. She wasn't interrupting. She was simply standing, clutching something against her chest with both hands. Robin noticed her immediately. His comedic instincts told him this was either going to be a great moment or a disaster. He paused, smiled that familiar Robin Williams smile, and acknowledged her. "Yes, sweetheart? You okay?" His voice was gentle, curious, still in performance mode but already sensing something deeper. The woman didn't sit back down. She took a breath, visibly steadying herself, and spoke just loud enough for the microphone to catch. "Mr. Williams, I need to show you something. I've been carrying this for 7 years, waiting for this moment." Something in her voice made the entire room hold its breath. This wasn't a fan wanting an autograph. This was something else entirely. Something sacred. Robin's expression shifted. The comedian's mask didn't exactly fall away, but it softened, became translucent. He could sense weight in her words, the kind of weight that doesn't belong in a comedy club but somehow finds its way there anyway. He gestured for her to come forward, and the audience parted slightly to let her through. She walked toward the stage with careful steps, like someone approaching a monument. In her hands was an envelope, worn at the edges, clearly opened and refolded many times. Robin crouched down at the edge of the stage, bringing himself to her level, and for a moment, the comedian disappeared entirely. What remained was just a man, curious and present. "What is it?" he asked quietly, though the microphone still carried his voice through the room. "It's a letter," she said, her voice beginning to shake. "That I wrote to you 7 years ago. I never sent it. I was going to, but then I didn't need to anymore. Because you'd already saved my life without ever knowing it." The room went even quieter, if that was possible. Someone in the back shifted in their seat, and the sound seemed deafening in the silence. Robin remained crouched, his full attention on this woman, on this moment that was clearly about to crack something open. She held the letter out to him. He took it carefully, as if it were made of glass. The envelope was plain, white, addressed to Robin Williams, in careful handwriting. No address. Never meant to be mailed. Just meant to be written. "You don't have to read it now," she said quickly. "I just wanted you to have it. To know that you mattered. That your work mattered in ways you probably never imagined." Robin looked at the envelope, then back at her. His eyes were already beginning to glisten, though he was fighting it. Decades of performance training, of controlling his emotional instrument, of knowing when to let feelings show and when to hold them back, all of it was suddenly irrelevant. "Can I?" he asked, gesturing to the letter. She nodded. "That's why I'm here. If you're watching this and feeling something shift inside you, hit subscribe. Because what Robin is about to read will change everything you thought you knew about comedy, about pain, and about the invisible threads that connect us all." Robin stood up slowly, unfolding the letter with careful fingers. The audience was frozen. Nobody moved. Nobody whispered. The only sound was the faint rustle of paper as he opened the pages, worn soft from being folded and unfolded countless times over 7 years. He began to read silently, his eyes moving across the words. At first, his expression was neutral, professional, the way someone reads a script for the first time. But then something changed. His breath caught. His hand came up to his mouth. His eyes widened slightly, then softened, then filled with something that looked like recognition and heartbreak mixed together. The letter was dated February 2002. Robin's eyes found that date, and held there for a moment before continuing. February 2002. He would have been filming something, or touring, or doing press. He wouldn't have known that somewhere in the world, a woman was sitting alone in her apartment, writing a letter she never intended to send. The woman on the stage spoke softly, filling in the silence while he read. "I was 23, she said to the audience as much as to Robin. I had made a decision. I had pills. I had a plan. I had written goodbye letters to my family." Robin's hand trembled slightly, but he kept reading. "But before I did it, I thought I'd watch one more movie. Just one more thing before the end. And I put on Good Will Hunting. I'd seen it before, but I thought one more time." Robin stopped reading. He looked up at her, and in his eyes was something the audience had never seen in him before. Not in performances, not in interviews, not even in his most dramatic roles. It was pure, unfiltered recognition of shared pain. The woman continued, tears now streaming freely down her face. "There's a scene. You know the one. Where you tell Matt Damon it's not your fault. Over and over. And something in me broke. Or maybe something in me finally let go. But I cried for the first time in months. Real crying. And I realized that I was so angry at myself, had been blaming myself for everything, and I needed to hear what you said in that scene." Robin's lips moved silently, perhaps repeating those famous lines to himself. "It's not your fault." 4 words that had become iconic, memed, referenced, parodied. 4 words that were, in this moment, stripped of all cultural baggage and returned to their raw power. "I didn't take the pills that night," she said. "I called someone instead. I got help. I did the work. And every time I struggled, I watched that scene again. Your voice became the voice I needed when I couldn't find my own." Robin folded the letter carefully, his hands shaking now, no longer trying to hide it. He looked at her, and for a long moment either of them spoke. The audience barely breathed. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This was something else. Something holy. "What's your name?" Robin asked finally, his voice thick with emotion. "Sarah," she said. "Sarah." He repeated it like a prayer. Then he did something nobody expected. He sat down on the edge of the stage, his legs dangling over, suddenly looking much older and much younger at the same time. The comedian, the actor, the performer, all of those identities had been peeled away. What remained was just a man confronting the weight of his own impact. "I need to tell you something," Robin said, and his voice cracked on the first word. He paused, collecting himself, or perhaps deciding whether to say what he was about to say. "That scene. That whole movie. I almost didn't do it. I was tired. I was dealing with my own stuff. I thought I'd done enough therapy scenes, enough father figure roles. My agent had to talk me into it." He looked down at the letter in his hands. "If I had said no. If I had passed on that role. But you didn't," Sarah said gently. "But I didn't," he repeated, and the tears finally came. Not dramatically. Not performatively. Just real tears sliding down his face while he sat on a stage in front of 150 people who had come to laugh and were now witnessing something they would never forget. This is the moment that would change Robin Williams forever. Not because of the applause, not because of the accolades, but because of a letter that proved comedy could do more than make people laugh. It could make them stay. Robin wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, then laughed, a small, broken sound. "I'm supposed to be the one making you laugh tonight. You did more than that," Sarah said. "You made me want to live." The audience erupted. Not in laughter. In applause. Standing, sustained, the kind of applause that isn't about appreciation for entertainment, but about bearing witness to something true. Robin stood up, still holding the letter, and opened his arms. Sarah stepped forward, and they embraced on that stage, two people connected by invisible threads of pain and healing and the strange alchemy of art. When they separated, Robin looked out at the audience with red eyes and a smile that was entirely genuine, entirely unguarded. "You know," he said, his voice still rough with emotion, "I get asked a lot why I do comedy. Why I keep doing it when I could retire, when I've already done so much. People think it's about the money, or the fame, or the creative fulfillment." He held up the letter. "This is why. This right here. Because somewhere out there, someone is watching, someone is listening, someone needs to hear that they're not alone. That their pain isn't permanent. That there's another side to the darkness." He looked back at Sarah. "Thank you for staying. Thank you for fighting. Thank you for showing me this. Thank you for being there when I needed you," she replied. Robin turned back to the audience, and you could see him trying to find his way back into performance mode, trying to pick up the comedian's mask he'd worn so naturally just minutes before. But it wouldn't quite fit anymore. Not tonight. Tonight, he was just Robin, standing in front of people who had seen him cry, who had seen him break, who had seen him reel. "So," he said, with a small smile, "I'm supposed to do another 40 minutes. But I don't know if I can follow that." The audience laughed, grateful for the release of tension, but it was gentle laughter, understanding laughter. "How about we just talk for a while?" Robin said, sitting back down on the edge of the stage. "Anyone else got a letter that's going to destroy me?" More laughter, but also something else. Permission. Permission to be vulnerable, to be honest, to let the mask slip. For the next 30 minutes, what followed wasn't a comedy set. It was a conversation. People shared stories. Robin shared stories. There was laughter, yes, but there were also tears. There was silence. There were moments of such raw honesty that it felt like the walls of the Comedy Store were holding their breath. One man stood up and talked about losing his brother and finding comfort in Dead Poets Society. A woman shared how Mrs. Doubtfire helped her children cope with her divorce. Another person talked about depression, about survival, about the small moments of grace that keep us going. And Robin listened. Really listened. Not performing, not waiting for his turn to speak, just listening with the full attention of someone who understood that stories matter, that being heard matters. When the show finally ended, long past its scheduled time, nobody wanted to leave. People lingered, talking to each other, hugging strangers, connected by something they couldn't quite name but could definitely feel. Robin stayed on stage, talking to anyone who approached, no longer separated by the boundary between performer and audience. Sarah stayed until nearly everyone had left. When it was finally her turn to say goodbye, Robin held both her hands and said, "I'm going to keep this letter. I'm going to read it when things get dark, when I forget why I do this. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you for saving my life," she said one more time. "No," Robin said quietly. "Thank you for saving mine. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that art can heal, that connection matters, that we're all fighting battles nobody else can see, then share this video. Subscribe so you never miss these moments that remind us what it means to be human. Because Robin's story isn't just about one night. It's about all the nights. All the people. All the invisible threads connecting pain to hope." Backstage, after everyone had finally left, Robin sat alone in the dressing room. The letter was on the table in front of him. He read it again, slowly this time, without an audience, without the pressure of the moment. It was even more powerful in the quiet. Sarah had written about her childhood, about trauma, about the slow accumulation of pain that had convinced her she was broken beyond repair. She had written about the exact moment in Good Will Hunting when Robin's character breaks through Matt Damon's defenses, when he repeats, "It's not your fault," until the walls crumble. She had written, "I realized that I had been waiting for someone to give me permission to forgive myself. And you did. Through a screen, through a performance, through words that weren't even written for me, you did." Robin folded the letter back into its envelope. His makeup was smeared, his eyes were red, but something had shifted. He wasn't just a comedian anymore. He was a lifeline. And he would carry that letter with him until the end, a reminder that sometimes the greatest performances aren't the ones that make people laugh. They're the ones that make people stay. That night, Robin Williams learned that comedy wasn't just about the punchline. It was about the connection. The invisible thread between pain and hope. Between one human and another. And sometimes, that thread is strong enough to hold someone here when everything else is pulling them away. Sarah walked out of the comedy store that night knowing she had given Robin something precious. But what she didn't know was that he had needed it just as much as she had needed him all those years ago. Because artists pour themselves out endlessly, wondering if any of it matters. And that night, Robin finally knew. It mattered. He mattered. And he would never forget it.